Today I'm going to really provide you an update and really talk about some of the milestones we've hit through the checkoff program. And I'm very excited to say I get to talk to you about something and make an announcement that in all my time working with ag groups, I've never been able to do. So I think that's going to be exciting and hopefully get you guys a little geared up for the future. And I think as we look at wheat, there's so many opportunities. And I think as we look around the room, we had more than 300 people register to come to a meeting to learn more about wheat. And I think that says a lot about what our opportunities are, how we can move things forward, and some of the enthusiasm about the industry. I think most of you know who we are. When we look at the Wheat Checkoff program, Dave introduced the board to you. Those folks are making these decisions. And this is what we're really looking to do, is to make sure we have a viable, thriving, and growing wheat industry. And that really, when we look at all the components and all those important keys, are part of that industry. When we look at where we focus, definitely you guys have heard me say this before: research, production, education, and communication. Events like this are huge. A little bit of promotion with consumers and market development. But definitely we're looking at and very much focused on research. When we look at what are some of the things we can do and ways we can make a difference, I think this has a lot to do with some of our excitement and some of our energy. You know, we always talk about, well, other industries, they have biotechnology, they have GMO, there's been more money put towards research. Look at some of the things they've been able to do. Look at what we've been able to do. You, the growers, we've increased the state average of wheat, the yield, 14 bushels in just 5 years. Now, I have to say, when I started with the board and we had our strategic plan, one of the things we talked about, and Jerry's smiling at me, he remembers, we had a long debate when we talked about yield and what can we do, how can we affect yield, what's that right number, what do we need to look for. I think 14 bushels in 5 years, you guys are doing an awesome job. And as we do more research and look for more opportunities, there's really a lot of things coming around in the industry. 89 bushel average for the state. We're going to hear a couple speakers later talk about 167 bushels, 147 bushels. When we look at the U.S., the average is 55. So we really do have some things here in Michigan to get excited about and really to look forward to. And it's not going to be very long, and we're going to be in that 90 bushel range, and that gets us pretty close to 100. So lots of opportunities when we look at wheat. Certainly, as we look at the industry, we want to make sure that, especially at this point, we thank the growers. Milestones for us were to get the program up and started. In 2011, when the program was voted in, it was voted in by 54% of growers. The time before that, when it was tried, it failed by 54% of growers. So about half of you said, let's give it a shot. We'll see if it works. 5 years later, we went back to the vote of the growers, and 80% of you said, we support it and we want it to continue. So we take that very seriously, and as we look ahead and as we look at your funds, we feel it's very important to be very transparent. The funds that come in through the Wheat Checkoff program, this is where they're spent. 65% of those funds goes right back out for research. Then you can see when we look at what we have, certainly we have some of our events, 11%. That's events like this and the summer field day. You saw the date up there. Coming this summer, June 14th at MSU at campus. We'll have that, talk more about the research. Then when we go ahead and look, sponsorships, memberships, other groups we're part of, and then move ahead to board expenses, and then you look at your assessment collection and your overhead or your staff costs, those kinds of things. So definitely our focus has been research. And when we look at research, one of the things the board identified early on were boots on the ground. A lot of stuff had to happen for wheat. We had a lot of researchers at Michigan State, but their programs and their agendas were fairly full. So we were able to get some time in their programs, but we really didn't have that push. We had Martin, who had been doing programming and was continuing to do programming. He was up in Sanilac County. We needed to have that statewide coverage, and we were lucky to be able to add Dennis Pennington in a joint position funded by the Wheat Checkoff at Michigan State, and he is really those boots on the ground out there all the time. If you have a question, if you have a challenge, I think he about runs the tires off his truck. I know he saw it was going to snow Monday, so Sunday he worked so he could get out there and get the applications done. And then when you look at Eric Olson, our wheat breeder, we were able to partner with several of the millers, with some of the end users like Kellogg. We all put money for 3 years into that position to tell MSU we have to have a wheat breeder. So I'm going to talk a little more about the programs, but I also want you to understand the people that are behind this and all the folks every day that are working to make sure people don't forget about wheat and they're keeping it on the top of mind and making sure they're doing what they can to support wheat. This was probably, when we look at milestones and we look at announcements, this was one of the biggest that got picked up and covered. As we looked at the projects, we looked at the people. The next thing that was limiting was the land. You know, MSU has talked some about the farms they have, the experiment stations. We're looking at doing some long-term trials, some rotations. We have some research going with corn and soybeans, and I think Gail's over there. We've been working that relationship to keep those projects going. And there was research already going for corn and soybeans, but we needed to make sure we had the opportunities and the long-term opportunities for wheat. So the board worked with MSU, and there was an opportunity up at the Saginaw Valley Research and Extension Center for them to be able to add up to an additional 150 acres to that farm. So working with the board and talking with Michigan State committed to keep wheat research and keep the farm up there in research for 25 more years. And the wheat board made a 5-year commitment of $750,000 to be able to add more land and have a commitment from Michigan State to stay committed to wheat. And that's pretty fun to be able to say that, and pretty exciting when we look at an industry to see the commitment that we have, that we're looking 25 years down the road because we want to make sure we keep wheat on the cutting edge. So thank you to the support of the growers, but thank you to the board. That is not an easy decision to make, to add those funds, to look at those maps. They were very involved, and I think the project is moving ahead really well. And there'll be a lot of neat things you see in the future as we go up there for field days and maybe even hold other meetings up there to talk about the research. When we look at research and research projects to date, and this is really kind of a wrap up of our first 5 years, we have funded over 75 different research projects and invested about $2 million. Most of that research has been with Michigan State. We also have some research at Ohio State and the Lenawee County Center of Excellence. So when you look at that research, where's that funding? I'm not going to read through all this. You can see those. But 22%, of the funds that come in, 65% goes to research. Of that, 22% of those funds have gone to the MSU Wheat Breeding and Genetics Program. 16% of those have gone to disease. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about disease and some opportunities that we've found there, but lots of different areas to take a look at. And that's where it's been very important to have somebody like a Dennis to work with Eric to get some things really done on the fly like they did last year. If you got our e-newsletter, we put out a bulletin with Eric and with Dennis that they had pulled together from all the data and some data from Martin that said some of these varieties are the most susceptible. If you planted these varieties, this is what you need to do. And you need to be out there and you need to be scouting. Anything like that we can do to pull that information together, we want to make sure we get it out to you, the growers. We're also looking a lot at nutrient management, and we've spent about 16% of the budget there. We've also looked and worked with millers on some of the processing and the quality. So about 16% of that research budget has been utilized there as well. And then 8% for health. Not a large amount of the budget, but some information came to us from MSU and a researcher really looking at the allergenicity, looking at the celiacs. He has a couple neat ideas, so we're doing some work there to see what we can do, and also looking at some health benefits, and believe it or not, antioxidants through wheat. So we're looking to see red versus white. Are there differences? How can we use some of this? Really trying to see, are there some marketing opportunities for the future? Also looking at cover crops at 5% and the high management at 5%. And then everything else kind of falls together. The diagnostics program, when you get to the field this spring, if you have wheat that doesn't look quite right, The Michigan Wheat Board has again funded the program. If you send that into the MSU Diagnostics Lab, we will cover the cost of that. In one of the posters out there next to the restroom, there are signs or there are handouts that you can pick up. They're also in your packet, and that is the diagnostics form. So take one of those with you, and if you need it, you have it, and we cover the cost. Then at the end of the year, we get an overview that says these were some of the issues and some of the challenges, and then we know a lot better where we need to focus and what we need to look at for the future. So having done that, I think I've kind of wrapped everything up. I'm looking at a lot of the board members. I think they're okay. I think I've covered that. The next part for me is very exciting. I have worked in managed commodity groups for close to 20 years, but I know I don't look that old, do I? Jerry knows to smile. Before that, I worked for MDA and did oversight of the commodity groups. And I have to say I'm very excited because in all this history, I've never been able to talk about a project that we've done that has moved this far along, that we're actually looking at patents and applications and those kinds of things. And it's very fun to work with a board and a program, and you as the growers, you've said, go. What can we do? We need to look at quality, 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 quality. We looked at quality. And many thanks to the board, because some of these are not always easy, but we had a researcher come in, and her idea was to look at the identification of genes to control Fusarium head blight. Now, I think we all know if we're looking at diseases, that's one of the big ones, and we need to see what can we do, how can we move things ahead, and are there some answers? So we started working with Miriam Stickland, and she had some ideas to really look to see, there's some varieties that seem to be affected more than others. What are some of the things in those varieties that don't seem to have the outbreak or don't seem to be infected? She looked worldwide. What are some of the different varieties of wheat that are grown? Are there things we can do? And as a board, we had a long discussion. That can be really long research, and that can be pie in the sky research. You never really know, but the board knew that Fusarium head blight was a huge issue and decided we better see what we can do. Well, Miriam had an idea, and there was actually 2 different genes that she found that both help. But if you take those 2 genes and you put them together, they're pretty awesome. So this is, if you take a look, these are my pictures, and this is still very preliminary, but the paperwork is done and through the attorney, so I can talk to you about this, and I am very excited. You can see as you take a look over at the one that would be on your right, that's all beige, that looks pretty rough, that is a normal wheat. If you look next to it at the head that's nice and green, that's the head that has those 2 genes. And if you look, there's a little black spot, and you can kind of see like a little gold around it. That's where it was infected, and that's where it shows the disease. It does not take the whole head, it just takes that spot. So when she shared back with the board that this is what it looks like, we got pretty excited. So these are one of those projects that we're taking a look at. We definitely need to move forward. This work has been done in the lab and in the greenhouse. And in the lab and in the greenhouse, as you can see, when you have control like that, you are not losing the yield. When you look at the stem of the plant, you can see how it still maintains that green. So we have a lot more work to do, but these are the kinds of things we're looking at. These are the projects that we're focusing on through the checkoff dollars, and this is some of the stuff that can be out there and be in the future. So right now, paperwork is filed to get a patent. We're working with Michigan State, and we're also looking to see, now that we know what those genes are, and we know what that looks like in the plant, now the next step, and glad Eric Olson is here, our wheat breeder, because Eric will be part of all these discussions. Now we need to find those plants that have those genes and have that sequence. Then we need to start that breeding process to see if we can get this, how long it will take to get this, and Eric has done an amazing job taking that breeding timeline and shortening it significantly. So then we need to look at this and say, how can we get this in our varieties? So this is not something that you're going to see in the next year or 2, but we are moving ahead with this as quickly as we can to make sure we take advantage of this, to find out how we need to move this, and how we can get this so this is available for Michigan producers. And we've also had the discussions with Michigan State. This was Michigan wheat farmer money that funded this. So as this technology is available, this needs to be available and affordable to Michigan wheat farmers because you paid to have it developed. So this is something that, this is the first time we've talked about it. So it's pretty exciting. This is pretty amazing technology. You all know there is no GMO wheat, there is no biotech wheat, so this is not going to be approached in a biotech atmosphere. This, now that the genes are identified, we need to identify the other plants, and then this we'll look at through conventional breeding. So very excited about the future and what it holds. This pretty much I talked about. I just wanted to leave the slide up that showed the pictures because that's one of my favorite slides. So as we look ahead and look to the future, we have some more research on this level. We're looking at still disease, we're looking at quality issues, and really looking at the horizon, what else can we do and how can we help producers? So with that, really quickly, every year I remind you, we have a 9-member board, which is the 8 farmers, and then we have Art Leffler from Star of the West, which fills that Miller position. And each year we have 3 positions that are up. So if any of the stuff I've talked about was exciting, or you're interested, or you want to have a seat at the table to help make some of these funding decisions, I will tell you this is one of the hardest working boards. We have a research meeting coming up, and we start at 8 o'clock one morning. They don't even know yet. We go till 8:30 that evening, and we start the next morning at 7:30, and right now we're scheduled to go to 6 o'clock that night. So, yeah, Jerry's, it's going to be brutal, but lots of proposals, lots of opportunities to have input, and lots of opportunities to make a difference. So if that interests you and you want to be part of that board and part of those discussions, the 3 positions that we have up this year, one is District 7, which is the gray, which is the tip, if you look at the tip of the thumb. And then just south of that in the bright blue, District 5. And then over on the southwest corner, the green. And those positions now are held by Carl, if you want to raise your hand, Dave, right up here, and then Sally is over there. If you're interested in one of those board positions, please see them. The paperwork needs to be done and filled out this month. Then it goes to the governor's office, and the governor makes the decision if he reappoints or appoints a different person in those positions. But we have to have 2 names for each position, so please let me know if you have some interest and you want to be part of these discussions. So with that, here's our contact information. If you have an idea, if you have an issue, even if you have a pest or it's something you think, those might be some great pictures, give me a call. I've been all over, certainly not quite as much as Dennis, certainly not on the agronomy side. But if you have ideas, if you have projects, we want to make sure we hear what you have to say. Also, if you have not already, there's our website, miwheat.org. There is so much information there. Log on to the website. Across the top, we have a tab that says research. All of our completed research projects get launched up there on the website. So under research, pull down the tab and you can look by topic. Go up and you'll see the final PowerPoint the researcher did, and you'll also see the final written report, and we'll have information so you can contact the researcher directly. Then when we do events such as this and the field day, you can see Steve back there. He is taping all this again as he has in the past. This Ho Days program will be up on the website along with the PowerPoint presentations and any handouts. So if you forget everything we say, it will be there for you to go back and look it up. So with that, I think I've covered everything pretty quickly, but just wanted to give you an idea and definitely wanted to give you some feedback so you know what we're doing, where we're focused, and how we're trying to move things ahead. So with that, I do believe I have a minute or 2 for questions, if there's any questions.
2 questions. One, who will actually own the patents on this research? And once we own it, or whoever owns it, will they be able to like lease it out or sell it out to different companies and stuff?
So Michigan State owns all patents of research that's done at Michigan State. That's just how it is, and you can't change that. Our agreement says we have a seat at the table to figure out how that technology is launched and where that technology goes. And we have already said, that's grower-funded research. Growers need to have access to all that technology. We haven't talked a lot more about that because we still need to make sure, even though it works in the lab, it's going to work in the field. So there's going to be some years where we're just working on it and seeing what we can do. I know there's some other nurseries where we can grow some things and kind of speed things up, but we'll be talking more with Eric and his folks and looking to see what we can do and how we can move it forward. But this, patents and paperwork and stuff, I don't think all that stuff even happened till December. So this is really new, but we wanted to make sure you heard it in person at the annual meeting. But we're looking out for that because we want to make sure you guys have access to it and it's available.